Thank you, Laskin Corla. First of all, Minister, I want to say that I'll be supporting the bill, and hopefully we'll never have to use it. I think that's the first thing we should all say. I think earlier on, Minister, there's a lot of talk has been about our access to Europe, and I think, Minister, the likes of Rosslare, we have to up the ante in it. In the line of a lot of our stock is exported. We have a 919 system, and I think the government should be looking at putting a lairage system in place in the likes of Rosslare to help the situation for the exporting of our calves through the live export business. There is a lot of critical things, Minister, in the line of milk goes across the border both ways. To be quite frank about it, the other part to it is, and there's a reference in the bill about employment, and that we want to make sure as well, Minister, that there's a lot of talk about it in Southern Ireland about subcontractors coming down. How will we know after Brexit how legit or whatever it is, and how safe it is to give contracts out like that to northern businesses? Because obviously we won't be able to look into them the same way as we were before this. I think that it has been spoke earlier on. I think a previous speaker, when Deputy Collins and Healy Ray and Deputy McGrath were speaking about the cross-border, a speaker after that said that it was Britain is pulling away, and yeah, we know that it is. But thankfully, I know that in the line of cancer care treatment, there is, for the triangle that goes on in the northern half of our country, there is a triangle there to make sure that people, be it in Donegal or Sligo or whatever, can access treatment for cancers. And unfortunately, Minister, there are people in this country at the moment that are 2 and 3 and 4 years waiting to get cataract done on their eye. Simple, basic procedure that should be done for them. There are people in a lot of pain. And whether it's EU, and I understand that what you're saying is, whoever was the genius that wrote an answer from the HSE that said they'll be no longer able to go to Northern Ireland, but they'll be able to go to mainland Europe. So load them up and send them to France or send them to Holland. What an idea. I think we need to make sure that we put something in place, be it funded by ourselves, and just forget about the EU purchase treatment. Let us fund it ourselves and give that facility for the next year, 18 months, until we are able to be on top of it ourselves, because we have to make sure that we look after people. And Minister, in the line of the agricultural side of it, I think we cannot wait until the final day and the final hour, and I know nobody knows, I understand that, but I think the EU needs to be sending signals for comfort and solace for the Irish farming community that if a hard Brexit happens with those tariffs and that intervention will open at a proper price, not at a reduced price, that be it the dairy side of it and the beef side of it will be looked after. I know in the line of the sheep, I don't think we'll be too real bad, for the simple reason we import a lot of sheep from Northern Ireland and from England. But we need to put these things in place to make sure that we're not putting fear into both businesses and fear into the farming sector. We need to make sure in the likes of Rosslare and that whatever infrastructure is required, and I heard them talking about boats at 24 knots. I don't know enough about boats to know what speed they need to go. But what we need to do is basically have a ramped up sea ferry crossing for all the lorries that goes in and out, because obviously we are an export-led country, and I think that whatever effort needs to be made in the next few weeks, rather than basically closing a door, we need it for the beef sector and for basically the agricultural sector. And I think we have to be very mindful of the communities along the border as well. The reality will tell you that it'll be rural Ireland that will be take the biggest hit if we have a hard Brexit. And I think that we need to be ready to open the purse strings and whatever we need to do to keep them viable and to put in place solutions for the people in the rural areas. We need to do it. We need to make sure in the health side of it, as being pointed out, you know, in fairness, when we weren't able to cater for these people in our own country, it was a good scheme. Let's talk about the scheme. It was a good scheme, and it solved a lot of people that were in pain, and we need to make sure that we do that. The other side of it, Minister, as well, we need to be looking at what's it going to affect. We have to realise that not every farmer, and generally most of them, don't buy a new tractor. A lot of the tractors are imported, Cambridge auction or the different auctions in England. We need to make sure that there isn't a massive ramp up in duty fees or whatever from the likes of there, because if there is, it's once again the rural farming community that we are going to be affecting. And you know, whatever needs to be done, in my opinion, or like the EU won't be, in my opinion, as badly affected as we are in this island. And I hope that Mr Barnier and Johnson, and when they're negotiating, that it can be resolved. But we'll see then who's our friends on the first day of January if this is a hard Brexit, because we need people to basically do the things, to put the steps in place that's required to make sure that, be it intervention, that it's open. Don't believe in a month or 2 or 3, that it's catastrophic in the whole agricultural sector, because that's one thing we don't need, especially with what people are going through at the moment. And in the employment side, Minister, I think that my honest opinion is that you won't be able to trace a company if they're you won't be able to look and see whether they'll go into liquidation or whatever they'll do. I know that you cannot, you know, forecast into the future, but there is some of that going on at the moment of cutting prices, and I think that we need to look. One thing we need to do, we need to look at a realistic price, not an overprice, but a realistic price. And if there's a lot of this cutting prices coming from, you know, outside of our 26 counties, it could be from Spain or wherever, because anyone can tender in the EU at the moment. We need to look at it very, very sharply, because we have to keep employment as well in our own country. All I'm saying is, I support the bill. I wish you luck in the negotiations. We don't want to be even talking about this, to be honest about it. Let's hope, let's look at the glass half full rather than half empty. But if we have to look at it half empty, the one thing we need to do is have the steps in place that we're not going to have the agricultural sector, rural Ireland, brought to its knees overnight, especially with what they've gone through this year. Go to Margaret.